The silence of the suburban night in Lakewood, Colorado, was broken by a sound that didn't belong. A gasp, sharp and sudden, followed by a low, guttural cry of pain. It wasn't a scream of panic, not yet. It was something more primal. The sound of a man confronting an impossible, agonizing truth. In the dim light of a reptile room, a hand was locked in a vise of scaly, beaded flesh. A living jewel, a monster in miniature, had become a tether to the abyss. Something precious, something held in a moment of hubris and pride, was now a source of an excruciating, life-ending poison. The clock had just started ticking, and in this suburban home, life was already slipping away. We live our lives on a razor's edge, a delicate balance between the wild and the tame. We build our homes, we create our safe spaces, believing we have dominion over everything. We bring nature inside, not as a force to be reckoned with, but as an object of curiosity, a conversation piece, a pet. But what happens when the line blurs? When the wild, with all its untamed power, asserts itself within the very walls we built to contain it? What happens when a creature, a relic of a primal world, decides to remind us that it is not a pet, but a monster? This is the story of a man who crossed that line. A story of a rare and tragic event, the kind of story that reminds us of the true, unyielding power of nature and the dangerous naivety of those who think they can control it. Christopher Ward was a man who lived on the fringes of convention. At 34 years old, he had built a life around his passions, a world of intricate, often misunderstood hobbies. He was a creator, a hobbyist, a collector. He worked a respectable job in the Denver tech scene, but his true identity was in the quiet hours he spent at home, in the small, dedicated room filled with the husks of other worlds. He was a keeper of secrets, a connoisseur of the strange and the exotic. His apartment wasn't just a place to sleep. It was a sanctuary for the misunderstood. The air was thick with the faint, earthy scent of substrate and the quiet hum of heat lamps. Every terrarium was a miniature universe, each with its own delicate ecosystem, its own living, breathing occupant. He was a fixture at local reptile shows, the kind of guy who knew the difference between a crested gecko and a day gecko, who could talk for hours about the proper humidity for a tarantula's molt. He wasn't a loud or boastful man, but his passion was a quiet, burning fire. His girlfriend, who requested her name be withheld, shared his life and his fascination, but she always maintained a cautious distance. She saw the beauty in his collection, the vibrant colors and the strange forms, but she never forgot that these were wild things, creatures born of a different code. Christopher, on the other hand, saw them as his to command, a testament to his knowledge and care. He believed that with enough research and the right touch, any animal could be tamed. It was this belief that led him to the reptile exhibition in Denver, a bustling, chaotic marketplace of scaly wonders. It was there that he first saw Winston, a striking, prehistoric-looking lizard with a pattern of black and brilliant orange-yellow. A Gila monster. Christopher was instantly captivated. He knew the risks, he knew the warnings, but he saw something else in the lizard's placid, unblinking eyes. He saw a challenge. He saw a rarity. He saw a chance to possess a piece of the wild that few others could claim. The transaction was quick, a whisper in the crowded hall. He paid the money, a significant sum, and walked away with a living legend in a plastic container. He named him Winston. A few weeks later, he acquired a second, smaller Gila monster, a hatchling from a breeder in Arizona, and named her Potato. They were his crown jewels, the two most dangerous, most beautiful creatures in his collection. He was a man who craved the extraordinary, and in Winston and Potato he had found it. The Gila monster, or Heloderma suspectum, is a paradox. Its name, monster, suggests a fearsome, rampaging beast, yet in reality it is a creature of slow, deliberate movements. It is the largest lizard native to the United States, growing up to 2 feet in length, with a body covered in bead-like osteoderm scales that give it a unique, almost jeweled appearance. They are native to the arid deserts of the American Southwest and Mexico, where they spend over 90% of their lives underground, only emerging to hunt for eggs, small mammals, and carrion. Their reputation, however, is built on one simple, undeniable fact. They are one of only a handful of venomous lizards in the world. But their venom delivery system is nothing like a snake's. They don't strike and retreat. A Gila monster's bite is a commitment. Their teeth are grooved, and when they latch on, they don't let go. They hold on, chewing and grinding, allowing the venom to seep into the wound through capillary action. The venom itself is a cocktail of neurotoxins and enzymes, not designed to kill quickly, but to inflict unimaginable, searing pain. It causes a cascade of symptoms: severe, throbbing pain, swelling, nausea, and a drastic drop in blood pressure. The scientific consensus has long been that a Gila monster bite, while excruciatingly painful, is rarely fatal to a healthy adult human. The last recorded death was almost a century ago. The common wisdom was that you'd have to be intoxicated, in a weakened state, or suffer from an underlying condition for a bite to prove lethal. This was the conventional wisdom Christopher Ward knew, the dangerous half-truth he believed. The warning signs were subtle at first, easily dismissed. A fleeting comment here, a quick withdrawal there. Christopher's friends and fellow hobbyists knew of his new acquisitions. They'd seen the pictures, the brilliant orange and black scales of Winston, the smooth, dark skin of Potato. The reptile community is a tight-knit one, a world of shared obsessions and whispered advice. And the whispers around Christopher were always a little different. He's getting too comfortable, one person might say. He's handling them without proper tools. These were not the casual, harmless lizards of his other collections. These were living weapons, creatures with a power they rarely used, but always possessed. There were near misses, moments of pure, white-knuckled tension that only he and his girlfriend witnessed. She remembered a time when he was moving Winston's enclosure, his fingers too close to the lid. Winston had hissed, a sharp, angry sound that rattled through the room. Christopher just laughed it off, a casual dismissal of a clear warning. Another time, he was cleaning the water dish, his hand inside the tank for what felt like an eternity. She stood frozen in the doorway, her breath caught in her throat until he finally pulled his hand out, unscathed. He saw it as a victory, a sign of his skill and the lizard's trust. She saw it as pure, unadulterated luck. He had built his entire identity around the idea that he understood these animals, that he was an expert. He'd read the books, he'd watched the documentaries, he knew the rules. But he had forgotten the most important rule of all. The animal doesn't know the rules. It only knows its instincts. And a Gila monster, when threatened, when cornered, when it feels a moment of vulnerability, will bite. It's a defense mechanism, a final definitive answer to a perceived threat. And Christopher, in his hubris, had been pushing that boundary, getting closer and closer to the breaking point. The air was still on the evening of February 12th. The day had been uneventful, the quiet routine of a Tuesday evening settling over the Lakewood home. It was late, just before midnight, when she heard it, a small, odd sound from the reptile room. It wasn't the usual rustling of scales against glass or the soft scraping of a gecko on the wall. It was a grunt, a sound of strained effort and pain. Her heart jumped into her throat. She moved toward the door, her footsteps soundless on the carpet. The door was ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the hallway. She pushed it open, and the scene that unfolded was a living nightmare. Christopher was on his knees, one hand holding the side of a terrarium, but his other hand, his right hand, was trapped. A mass of dark, beaded flesh was clamped around his thumb and forefinger. Winston, the lizard, a foot and a half of pure reptilian fury, was latched on like a bulldog. Its jaws were locked, its body a tense, coiled spring. Christopher's face was a mask of shock and pain, his eyes wide, his lips pulled back in a silent grimace. The venom was already working its magic. She could see the immediate, unnatural swelling of his hand, a purplish discoloration spreading from the point of contact. "Winston," he gasped, his voice a tight, strangled whisper. "He won't let go." She scrambled, her mind racing. The clock was ticking. She saw the tongs, the reptile hook, but she knew they were useless now. The lizard was a death grip of bone and muscle. She tried to pull his hand away, but it was like trying to pull a limb from a tree. The grip was impossibly strong. Every second felt like a minute, every minute an hour. He began to sway, his body trembling. The venom was a fire in his veins, spreading from his hand, up his arm, toward his heart. A wave of nausea hit him, and he stumbled backward, clutching his chest. At the hospital, a team of doctors gathered, their faces etched with confusion and concern. They consulted with poison control and toxicologists, the medical community buzzing with the news of the unprecedented case. There was no anti-venom for Gila monster venom. Treatment was entirely supportive, a desperate attempt to manage the symptoms as his body fought the toxins. He was intubated, his breathing taken over by a machine. He was put on life support, his body a battlefield, his heart and liver, already compromised by pre-existing conditions, struggling to keep up with the overwhelming assault. The police and animal control arrived at the house the next day. The girlfriend, emotionally and physically drained, cooperated fully. She pointed out the 2 Gila monster enclosures. Winston, the perpetrator, sat placidly in his tank, a silent, inscrutable figure. The officers, dressed in protective gear, carefully removed the lizards and the 26 tarantulas Christopher had also kept. The creatures were a testament to his passion, a collection of beautiful, dangerous things, now evidence in a tragic case. The lizards were handed over to animal control, a team that had never had to deal with an incident like this before. The story was already leaking to the media, a bizarre and chilling headline about a man, a pet, and a poison that was never supposed to kill. The news spread like a wildfire, a morbid curiosity gripping the nation. Man killed by pet Gila monster. The headline was a shock, a bizarre footnote in a world of more predictable tragedies. For 4 days, Christopher Ward clung to life, a fragile, fading presence on life support. But his body, battered by the venom and unable to recover, finally gave out. He was declared brain dead on February 16th, and the machines were turned off. His death, a quiet end in a sterile hospital room, was a stark contrast to the violent, chaotic beginning. The autopsy report was definitive, yet also a source of deeper reflection. The Jefferson County Coroner's Office confirmed that the cause of death was complications from envenomation. The venom had been the catalyst, the spark that ignited a fatal chain reaction. But the report also noted that Christopher had underlying heart and liver problems. These pre-existing conditions, the hidden weaknesses in his system, had made him uniquely vulnerable. The Gila monster's venom, which a healthy person might have fought off, had been the final fatal blow. The public reaction was a mix of shock, judgment, and morbid fascination. The internet lit up with debates about exotic pet ownership. Memes were created, jokes were made. But beneath the surface there was a real, tangible fear. People questioned the ethics of keeping such dangerous animals. The media descended on the quiet Lakewood street, cameras and microphones seeking answers that no one could give. Was the lizard to blame? Was it the owner's hubris? The answers were complex, messy, and tangled in the reality of a life lived on the edge. The 2 Gila monsters, Winston and Potato, became a part of the story. They were taken to a reptile sanctuary in South Dakota, a place where they would be cared for by experts, far from the suburbs and the dangerous whims of collectors. Their existence, once a source of pride for Christopher, was now a symbol of his fatal mistake. The incident sparked a conversation about the legality and morality of owning venomous animals. In Lakewood, as in many other municipalities, a permit was required to own such creatures, a permit Christopher did not have. The system had failed, a gap in the regulations that a man with a passion for the exotic had slipped through. The story of Christopher Ward's death became a chilling case study for zoologists, toxicologists, and law enforcement alike, a stark reminder of the unpredictable nature of the wild. The story of Christopher Ward is not a simple tale of good versus evil, man versus monster. It is a story about the complex dance between control and chaos, We believe we can bring the wilderness into our homes, that we can domesticate the undomesticable. We think that our knowledge, our care, our love for a creature can negate its fundamental nature. But a Gila monster is not a dog or a cat. It is a living, breathing testament to the power of evolution, a creature designed to survive in a harsh and unforgiving world. Its bite is not a sign of malice, but a simple act of defense, an instinct as old as time itself. Christopher Ward was a victim of his own passion, his own unwavering belief that he could tame a monster. He learned, in the most painful and final way, that some things are not meant to be tamed, and that the wild, no matter how small, no matter how beautiful, will always remain wild. And in the quiet reptile room, the silent hum of the heat lamps continues, a chilling echo of the moment the delicate balance was broken. A man, a monster, and a fatal 4 minutes that no one ever saw coming.